Hello and welcome to the DownShift. In this episode, we will recap last week's Barcelona Shakedown. And as you can see, we are a team member down as Schwags has decided to poison himself as he cooked chicken satay for the four of us, and he has fallen. So with that,
Full
is...
credit to him, though. The satay sauce was absolutely fantastic that he made.
The satay sauce was good. The chicken, maybe a touch on the rare side, but the satay sauce was good.
Well, I don't think, given his condition, there was a maybe involved in that now, so it's fine.
It's definitely a bit rare, a couple of them.
So with that, it's lights out.
Drop the clutch.
And let's get racing.
Hello and welcome to the DownShift. As we said, we're a team member down who has poisoned himself with chicken satay, but the three of us have drunk a cup of concrete and we've toughened up. So here we are looking at the Barcelona Shakedown, which was the first real taste of what we're expecting to see from the regulations in 2026.
Yeah, and what fantastic coverage there was, even though it was a complete blackout for media. We actually got a fair bit of data out of it, which was good.
Well, we got lap times, we got photography, we've got interviews with the drivers.
Yeah, F1 released some video as well. There's plenty of other YouTubers out there analysing aero and everything else. So yeah,
got a lot of media blackout. It's great.
Well, I think maybe the teams are worried about how it would go, but we'll talk about it in a minute. But the cars are pretty reliable, really.
And look, I think that's the biggest takeout from last week is the fact that reliability shone through, is for the fact that apparently we didn't have Williams on the track, but for the 10 other teams, there weren't any major issues in regards to the engine, the vehicle, and the drivers are all pretty positive.
They seem to be, yeah. I mean, obviously, there was a few teams that had some teething issues, but every car did laps, every car got a run, some obviously a lot more than others, and as you'd expect, there were a few that maybe struggled more than some of the other more established teams, but yeah, it was a lot of running.
A few good technical errors picked up here and there as well, which is always good to sort out on a shakedown, so bring it on.
And I think it's really important for us to be able to recognise that this was a shakedown. It's actually not a proper test days or time trials, and this was a request of the teams to be able to go into the new regulations and be able to have a closed private shakedown, so they can make sure that their cars would be reliable, and we saw that it was. And look, the data that was gathered over what was 14,129 kilometres of driving combined through all the teams is pretty impressive.
You've got a lot of time on your hands, don't you, to calculate this stuff? Right.
It's a lot of button presses on the calculator. I think there'll be a few drivers with sore necks after the last 5 days of testing, that's for sure, after a bit of an off-season.
So for those who weren't paying attention, this was a 5-day event from January 26 to 30 at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, where the teams actually got to choose 3 days out of the 5 to be able to go and just test out the car to see how it was performing. It was one car, 2 drivers, and essentially they were prioritising mileage over speed just to get some endurance testing to see how the engine, the chassis, the transmission were all melding together and being able to work. 10 teams participated out of the 11. Unfortunately, we saw that Williams had to skip due to production delays, opting for what was virtual track testing in the factory.
Is that a point to be concerned at this stage that they couldn't even get a car there on track for a shakedown of a new vehicle?
Yes.
Would you like to extrapolate, Huppy?
Yes. Other teams did hundreds and hundreds of laps and got great data, and Williams did not. No,
well, that's, they're going into the testing.
Well, the rumour was that they had trouble passing some of the impact tests, not for the chassis, but apparently for the nose of the car. And they opted not to try and get it on track, and they would just do virtual track testing. So as James Vowles pointed out in his little speech for everyone, they were still going to be running the car, running the engine, going through paces, but it's it's quite different to actually get it out on track and get the team working together and try and get some sort of semblance of a matchup between real world data and sim data so that they know, whether their simulations are going to be accurate.
With a JV here, he was leading with the chins, saying, "Hey, this is on me." And as he was saying, is the focus has always been on 2026 for Williams. With this, he's saying we've been pushing quite hard, and I'll pop a picture up here because this is JV actually speaking on YouTube to the fans. I'm going through and explaining, and he said we are transforming fast, but this shows. And my words have already said over the past few years, we are not at championship level. We still have a tremendous amount of work to do. Only by pushing the boundaries can you find the pain points and put them right, which is exactly what we are doing. We are not here to produce a car that's well and truly within tolerances. We have to push ourselves as a business to breaking point, and we've done so. It's painful, but it means we will never be here again.
Which is lovely. But that's effectively what every team is doing, isn't it? Everyone's pushing their team to the limit. Everyone else just got on track first. So, look, fingers crossed for them. They were competitive, last season. They had a good car. They had good, obviously great drivers. So it'll be fascinating to see how reliable that car is when they hit the track for proper testing.
So the word from Lassie and Williams is that they are doing virtual track testing now, which is taking a few days to be able to go through. They will have a media day before Bahrain, so they will get the car out on the track for the limited amount of kilometres that they're allowed to do for a photo day, and then they will be ready for Bahrain to actually go into proper testing. So that is the word from Williams. To your point, Huppy, that we've got Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon, who did well last year to finish in 5th position for the constructors. So the question will be, do we think that Williams is going to do better than P5 or worse than P5?
Yeah, time will tell. It's hard to imagine they'll be great at the start of the season with the lack of mileage compared to the other teams so far.
Mind you, they are carrying a Mercedes PU, and so we're seeing that with Mercedes, McLaren, Alpine, and Williams. So, and we've seen that the Mercedes PU has actually done quite well in testing. So, as a engine provider, Mercedes will take all that data from the shakedown and be able to iron out any bugs, which will have an advantage for Williams as well over the other teams.
We did see during the week someone posted some analysis of some top speeds at Barcelona in the race last year. So apparently Ocon had the top speed in the race of 345 k's an hour, and that was with DRS assistance down the straight. And apparently in testing, in shakedown, the Mercedes hit 347 k's an hour, so 2 k's an hour faster. So they've got some mumbo down the straight. We know that already.
We still don't know if the engines were dialed up to full stretch either.
100% they would not have been. No, I would not have thought for a shakedown.
No, shakedown is definitely more about endurance and making sure that the engine is going to last the distance, being able to sort of shake out any of the gremlins that may have existed or to get an understanding of the performance. And we've seen that there's been some controversy around the Mercedes PU and the Red Bull Ford powertrain PU as well, being able to get an extra couple of compression points in regards to it, being 16-1 versus 18-1. So it will be interesting for us to see how that actually shakes out over the first, I would say, 6 races of the season.
Although I was thinking about this morning, Locke, when you mentioned, would they be running full power? I think of the teams that did the shakedown, that they all would have had a long program of stuff they would have wanted to have run through, engine, aero, everything. And I could imagine that if they got through all of their program towards the end, then as we saw in some of the lap times that reduced at the end, teams would have done some sort of, call them a quali simulation. Now, maybe they weren't running full power and low fuel, but their drivers would have been in a position to lay a couple of faster laps down to see how the car went. So not surprising that Mercedes and Ferrari there had the quickest times at the end of the session, but I don't think they would have been running full power yet. They're going to hold something back for sure.
Yeah. And I'd just like to touch on the fact that last week we were talking about the livery reveals, and we finally got to see the Aston Martin come up to the track, and how good did that car look when it rolled out of in black? That looked like a mean-looking car. I mean, I know they're going to paint it green and all that, but that actually, for an Adrian Newey's his first one, that car looked phenomenal. I mean, didn't do a lot of laps at the point, but it looked fantastic when it rolled out.
It was nice that it lapped slow enough that we could all get a good look at it as it went around.
Exactly. Thank you, Lance. As we look at the design, and this is where you've got to be really particular in regards to comparing the cars, but the Aston Martin nose was actually had a higher profile on it and was wider as well. Now, to the eye, you may not notice the difference, but this is actually quite a difference to some of the other cars as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And they've also opted for the zero pod design as well. So we're seeing similar to the likes of Red Bull. And if we hark back to, as we talked about in the last episode, the Mercedes zero pod, which caused a lot of issues for the ground effect cars. So we'll see as we're going for the non-ground effect disease, we've got a higher rake and less downforce, whether or not that's going to have an impact on the vehicles.
I mean, everyone's obviously expecting quite a lot from the aero package from that Aston Martin because of Adrian Newey. Like, I mean, there's a whole team of aerodynamicists. He's not the only person designing the car,
but I understand that. Yep.
But everyone expects that car will be aero greatness. So, I mean, they didn't really get a chance to put it through its paces too much. They obviously had some issues in shakedown they're working through, but
and just to record, it wasn't all Lance Stroll's fault. There was a hydraulic issue, even though Christian's bagging him out. So I have to give him some, pass on that it was a hydraulic issue that actually, I think if I correctly, the marshals actually spotted it and said that he should pull over. So it actually wasn't his driving. It was a mechanical failure, we'll call that one.
But as an enthusiast, I was quite happy to see that we had different side pod configurations, different air intake configurations. Some of the wing profiles at the rear are different. Some people had little slots into the rear diffuser from the rear floor, others didn't. And the front wings were different too. The way the actuators work for the front element, Aston Martin's is rumoured to be electronic rather than hydraulic, and really some quite different front wing profiles. So teams have gone in different directions, and it'll be really interesting to see which cars work the best come proper testing and how they eventually converge to something that works the best,
And I think if you look at it in regards to last year, we've seen an evolution over years as all the cars have merged to one common platform. We've seen, to your point, Huppy, with the front wing, the rear wing, the barge boards. I mean, I was listening the other day in regards to that McLaren have got one rod which holds the barge board in, whereas Ferrari have three rods that hold the barge board in place. So we'll see that all evolve into what is almost becomes a standard platform. Not entirely this year, over the next few years as the vehicles evolve.
And even
we've still got different suspension set up too, don't you? Push rod, pull rod.
Exactly.
So that'll interesting to see which one actually is going to come out on top overall, depending on the aero package. So
and they used to modify the suspension pickup points to be quite high to help with anti-dive. So when they brake, the car wouldn't like nose forward or they had good traction when they got on power. But now the cars are running more rake. They don't have to be as low to the ground anymore to generate downforce. So that has caused the teams to rethink suspension, pickup points, that sort of thing as well. So, yeah, it's really it's awesome. These regulations have made a heap of changes. So it's probably the biggest regulation change in my living memory anyway.
Yeah.
And Happy, you were talking about before, and we'll push aside the 18-16 to 1 discussion, but this is actually where the innovation, the evolution in regards to part design, and as we're starting to go into 3D printing, which is changing the way we think about components and the way that they operate in regards to the elements.
Yeah, I think there was a video put out on YouTube by Driver61. Great channel. He does some great content. And it was a video that actually covered some of the detail on how the F1 teams can get that higher compression ratio when the engine's hot, and it's using different materials, different design, that sort of thing. But I thought the interesting part of that story was really the manufacturing processes and the materials that teams use, and the fact that they're pushing progress like no other industry when it comes to 3D printing production parts. And these guys will be 3D printing engine components that are operating, in a Formula One engine that's revving to 18,000 RPM. And, the G forces of a Formula One cylinder going up and down, they reach something like 5,000 G. So, a conrod in one of those cylinders has to be incredibly strong. And teams are 3D printing these cylinder heads and components and creating cylinder heads that were never, ever possible to be made using older techniques. So they can build channels within them for cooling and lots of different things. So I think just the technology aspect is the real story, that teams are able to try and do things to increase the compression ratio in an engine that's developing a huge amount of power, per litre at these sorts of forces and with that sort of energy, and still being efficient. They're one of the other things that has changed in the engines this year, for example, is the fuel pressure used to be, I think it was 500 psi or something, to inject fuel into the cylinders. That's been reduced to 350. So that's a really big change for teams to deal with. They can't squirt as much fuel in and be as aggressive with their spark as they used to. So there's lots more things in the regulations that haven't really made it to light that teams are grappling with to develop an engine that's reliable, same power, try and get back to the similar sort of compression ratio that they were running last year that was mandated to 18:1. So I think the technology is the fascinating part, not who's done it or who hasn't, but all the teams are working like this to try and push the limits, like James Vowles has said in his little message to everyone. So I think that's the best story of Formula One.
I agree with Nate there. Like, just watching the evolution of it, and you look back, when we first started, we were using Commodore 64s, and can you imagine trying to go back and go, well, let's 3D print something? 9 days later it would have loaded, and then about 6 years later it would have actually finished printing. So the evolution of what we've seen in our lifetime with just computers and technology, and for them to be able to go away, push a button, come back in the morning, and their parts ready to go for you. Where to next?
I go back to my days in Ford racing, is where we had a piece of aluminium, and as we were able to CNC route that to be able to go, oh, look, we're getting a micromillimeter out of that. To Huppy's point, is as 3D printing, we're taking the actual material out of the cylinder head or sorry, the piston, which allows us to be able to actually have gaps in the pistons. So they're actually able to create structural integrity in regards to the piston. They're actually able to take weight out of it. But this is where, when we talk about that 16:1, 18:1 ratio, by putting those gaps in place and by using the materials, they're allowing the piston to be able to change its geometry or change its size as it heats up and cools down. So that's the exciting part of it, is that you are creating space, but you're still keeping the structural integrity to allow it to evolve as the engine heats up, as the performance changes. So yeah, that'll then translate to production cars further down the track.
I think the engines themselves are just have got some incredible engineering and smarts in them to do what they do. So yeah, it's fascinating.
And I think this is where people may not have picked up on this as much, but when the Red Bull Ford powertrains reveal was actually broadcast, and we sort of got caught up in the Apple virtual headsets, what was really cool was to be able to see the 3D printing technology, because this allows the air intakes, or the direction of travel of air, to be manipulated in ways that you couldn't go and cast in the past. So this allows you to be able to 3D print something which will change the direction of air to be able to make it have a higher level of performance that you could never do in the past.
And not only that, it's the rapid prototyping, and once they test and find solutions that work, they can then build a production solution and get it into a wind tunnel, onto an engine mule, and get it done really quickly with 3D printing. Older manufacturing methods would take a long time and a lot of tooling and a lot of work. So we've just seen that innovation just accelerate over the last 20 or 30 years with that sort of technology.
So watch this space as we see the evolution through this season of Formula One. But as we step back to Shakedown and we look at what does this all actually mean, so we saw at Circuit de Barcelona de Catalunya, which is a 4.657 kilometre long track. As I said before, it meant that the teams collectively did a total of 14,129 kilometres over the 5 days. And we saw Lewis Hamilton, who recorded the fastest lap, pipping his previous teammate, George Russell, with 1 minute 16.348. So if we compare this to the 2025 Spanish Grand Prix, in the top 10, the average race pace was in the high 116s to 117. So we are there in regards to race pace. We didn't quite top the fastest lap, which was recorded by Oscar Piastri last year at 1 minute 15.743. But yeah, overall, the cars seem to be on pace.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be too far off. I mean, obviously, it changes with weather and tyre compound, and they will probably lower fuel laps. There were 16s and 17s, but I'd get the impression it won't be long before the 2026 cars are as fast as 2025 cars. I know they're supposed to be probably a little bit slower with less aero, but yeah, obviously the teams have done a pretty good job so far. You look at the total number of laps and those times, it's looking pretty promising.
Yeah, I think you'll find with a couple of tweaks that they'll be back to that in no time at all.
So if we throw the graph up here, so I've been able to pull this together in regards to the secret lap times that were apparently meant to be confidential. But we've got here, you can see Lewis Hamilton with a 1:16.348, having done 205 laps, followed closely by George Russell at 1:16.445 with 265 laps. So as you can see, a slow progression up in regards to it. And to your point is it's sort of blown out a little bit in regards to Lance Stroll, who only was able to complete 5 laps. As you were saying, there was a hydraulic issue that impeded his ability to do any more laps around that. We know that Aston Martin said that they were pushing to get there, and their prediction was to do 1 day, if not 2 at the max. So they did get out there on the second last day, with Lance doing a 1:46.404.
But Alonso got some laps in and lapped quicker than Bottas and Perez in the Cadillac. So they're not looking the worst. I think that the back half of the field looks like they're going to have to work a bit to catch up to the front half.
Yeah, because if you look even from the predictions before, the top teams, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, they were obviously going to come out, and the expectations were that they would be ahead of the pack anyway. And if you look at the lap times and the overalls, the top 4 are still the top 4.
Yeah. And there's not I know there's like 3-4 seconds or so in it, but it's not a huge swing, and there was no disasters, and everyone was able to get on track and look like run a reasonably competitive time around the track while they were doing testing. So I think the teams will all have to be pretty encouraged by it.
Shakedown, Nathan, not testing.
Shakedown. Sorry, shakedown.
How very dare you? But look, and for me, as I look at this, I mean, look, we had Hadjar who had spun out, but that was in the wet and so on wets as well. So I sort of discount that. What really shone out for me was Antonelli. Antonelli was 5th fastest overall, so some good performance from him. And the other part that for me is, and this is where a change, or the rookie driver, Arvad Lindblad, who had come out with, he actually went faster than his teammate Liam Lawson. So showing that even before we get into any sort of official testing or racing, Lindblad is showing that it was the right decision to bring him into Formula One.
Yeah, well, I think he's capable. Yeah, for sure.
Let's wait for a race before we make that decision. But
so it's Lindblad versus Punchy. I mean, really.
Well, my money's on Punchy taking him out if that's the case. Goodbye.
So who do you think, coming out of the shakedown, would have been the happiest team? Who would have been happiest, do you reckon?
So based on that, I'll throw the team results up. So what I've got here is the total number of laps which has been done by each team, and I've also put the average fastest time. So I've basically taken the fastest time from each driver, dividing that by 2. And we can see here that Ferrari, as a combined score, got 116.5 for both Lewis and Charles, with a combined 436 laps, followed by Mercedes, then McLaren, then Red Bull. So,
yeah,
I
back to
know
you, Hubbie.
Fred, I don't think you'll be able to wipe the smile off Fred's face at the moment. I think you'll be really, really happy with the fact that they got out there. The car ran really, really well. Both drivers were happy with it, and they still managed to clock in a reasonable time.
Yeah, and their times were a second faster than the Red Bull. We don't know if they were holding back a lot. It looked like Ferrari might have dropped a bit of fuel and put in a bit of a hero lap near the end just to get a good time, but Ferrari would have to be bloody happy with how that shakedown went, and then Mercedes as well. They both of those teams would have to be walking away going, look at all the data we got. We went through all of our tests. Awesome result.
Yeah.
And to your point, Huppy, and this is where it's the number of laps recorded. So when you're talking about 436 Ferrari, 505 for Mercedes, it's the data that they're collecting versus the other teams. For me, what was really interesting or uplifting to hear was Lewis being interviewed. And so Lewis was, you could tell he was comfortable with the car. He liked the change in regards to the regulations. And he's talking about the fact that the car was snappy and oversteery, but it was easier to correct. So he actually felt more comfortable.
Yeah.
Correct.
And a number of drivers said it was more fun to drive. And as a fan, I'd love to hear that it's a bit oversteery on the exit. Like, drivers are going to have to be careful with that throttle. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
Few extra wiggles as we go through. Excellent.
I think the other team that would have been pretty happy with this is Cadillac. I mean, I know they had some issues, but to be able to get 165 laps under the belt and a not embarrassing fastest time, and they probably were not running anywhere near to their limit in the car. I mean, a lot of the cars would have been running maximum cooling and everything else to not be too hard on engines. But yeah, what a good result for them. I know they've been working on this project for a long time, but to get out there and have similar best time to Audi and Aston Martin is pretty good.
Well, they're truly a new team. I mean, from that perspective, you look at Audi, who have taken over Kick Sauber. I mean, so you've got a lot of that infrastructure in place already. You've got a lot of that know-how. Cadillacs have basically built from the ground up. Apart from the fact that they're taking a Ferrari PU, everything else is new. So, from that regards, they've got nothing to be embarrassed by. They've got out there. They've run 165 laps quite confidently. Both Perez and Bottas have done extremely well, and they've both walked away being quite buoyant. So, I think, to be honest, if we look at Audi and Cadillac, I think Cadillac is probably the winner out of the two from Shakedown.
And I think if they can go into testing and not be the slowest in testing, or maybe be equal slowest and not hanging off the back somewhere, they'd have to be fist pumping back in the sheds, because they're not. Even if they didn't finish last this season, that would be a great result for Cadillac. Just build the team, not be hanging off the rear of the pack, being able to race a few cars and develop. So yeah, I think they'd be pretty happy.
I think the other team that'll be happy with themselves will be Haas too. I mean, they did a great number of laps. They came prepared. They were out on the track. They hit the ground running this year, and I thought their lap times were quite reasonable for it.
Yeah.
They ran a significant amount of laps. They'll be able to get a lot of data off as well. I think for the team size that they are, I think they'd be pretty happy with that. The whole shakedown that they've just done.
Yeah.
Well,
Alpine
fourth fastest.
Alpine got lots of laps, but their lap times weren't great. I'm not too sure. Have you mixed in some wet laps in there as well, intermediate laps, or are these all dry?
It was just total laps. So it was total laps from the Shakedown, yeah.
Yeah, yep. But I think Alpine would have liked to have maybe got a little bit of a faster time in there. But yeah, all in all, that picture paints a pretty good one as far as reliability for an initial shakedown in a big set of new regulations.
So any other highlights from the Shakedown team?
I think McLaren would have been a bit disappointed. They had a fuel issue which knocked them out for quite a while. They would have liked to have got a few more laps for sure in their car. But their time seemed okay. People seemed reasonably positive. Yeah, but I think they would have expected a bit more.
So basically, we've wrapped up Barcelona, which was a smooth start to what is a revolutionary era. We've seen the biggest change in Formula One regulations of all
In
time.
a long time.
With reliable runs, exciting designs, and we now look to Bahrain that will reveal more. We've got some car reveals over the coming week, but then we've got Bahrain testing, so the official testing, which will start on the February 11th, going through to February 13th. And then we'll have a second week of testing before we then look at the Australian Grand Prix, which is the 6th to the 8th of March. We're really interested in regards to seeing what our listeners have to say. So if there's anything that you wanted to cover off or some predictions or thoughts around what's coming up for the coming weeks, please put those in the comments below so we can read those out, go through them, discuss them, answer your questions as to what our insights are.
Yeah, more than happy if people want to send in some predictions for Dan and I to help with our selections for teams and drivers and things like that. Happy and KT, you're out of this, but yeah, we're more than happy for them to send through for some help with us.
I'm just looking forward to testing in 6 or so days by the time this goes live. And actually, I would love to hear who our listeners think is going to finish on top of the manufacturers' standings at the end of the year. It's always hard to predict when you've just seen some shakedown laps, but if anyone's got a prediction on which team's going to finish on top, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, because Huppy and I are continuing to feel the ribbing from both Lockie and Schwags as to predicting Ferrari to finish first last year. So,
I'm trying to forget about it. Yep.
Seems like we were quite reasonable in that, if I believe.
They're looking better this year, I might add. So
they are looking better this year. So, but again, this is Ferrari, so they never fail to disappoint.
They could trip on their own shoelaces for sure.
So with that, we'll look forward to next week. Only one episode this week, as we've reviewed the shakedown. We'll then look to some of the more of the reveals before we get into the official testing in Bahrain, and we'll see you all on the next lap.